Good morning.
Good morning.
This is quite a week. How many of you were at the Advanced Manufacturing Summit yesterday? So as you know, the governor declared this is, one of the things he can do is he can make proclamations. And this is indeed Advanced Manufacturing Week in the Commonwealth, officially. And so this conference couldn't have been sponsored for a better week, and on a most beautiful day, and with the most wonderful panel. I didn't know Susan would introduce me like that, but I have to tell you one story before we begin. One of the things that I do at Northeastern University when we became the Dean of the School of Public Policy was to create something called the Open Classroom. The Open Classroom is a true graduate seminar with real graduate students who write papers and take exams, but we open up the lectures to the public free of charge. We started this in the fall of 2008 when my colleague Michael Dukakis, some of you may remember Michael, and I did a course called Policy Advice to the President. And we had hundreds of people turn out every week to hear about policy advice to either Mr. McCain or to Mr. Obama, election. We did that course again last fall. And we had a stellar cast of characters as our guest speakers, beginning on the economy with Larry Summers, who at that time, of course, was advising Obama, Greg Mankiw, who was the chief economic advisor to Mr. Romney. We had Eric Rosengren from the Fed later, and then we turned to foreign policy. And we were looking at Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan. And one of the people that Governor Dukakis invited was his old friend, Ambassador Nicholas Burns. Nick Burns now teaches at Harvard University, but he has a stellar career as a diplomat, having been ambassador to Mauritania, ambassador to Greece, ambassador to the United Nations, and then Deputy Secretary of State under Condoleezza Rice. So this is a man of great diplomatic prowess. And someone I followed very closely over the years, and he does a weekly column, including a spectacular one today, on Iran in the Globe. I get to the lecture hall, which is quite large, seats 300 or plus. Mike and his wife Kitty are talking with Ambassador Burns and his wife. And finally, very humbly, I turn to him and I say, Mr. Ambassador, I'm Barry Bluestone. I want to tell you how honored we are here to have you at Northeastern University. But it's more than an honor for the university, sir. It is a personal honor to finally meet you. I have followed your career, and I follow your column, and it is just such an honor to finally meet you. At which point, Ambassador Burns turned to me and says, you know, Barry, we've met before. And I humbly say, Mr. Ambassador, I'm afraid I don't recall that. To which he says, I was an undergraduate student of yours in 1978. In political economy 358, you gave me a B+, and I deserved it. I instantly felt two things simultaneously. One, great pride, and number two, God damn, I must be 1,000 years old. So it's great to hear from a fellow, a former student. Well, I just want to give you a quick run-through of our second staying power report. I've reduced this from 3,627 slides to about 4 or 5. But as some of you may know, back in 2007, released in July of 2008, the Dukakis Center prepared its first report on manufacturing, called Staying Power, the Future of Manufacturing in Massachusetts. And we came to a very rosy conclusion in that report. After surveying over 700 manufacturing concerns in Massachusetts, as well as interviewing over 60 of them. And we painted this rosy picture. The report came out the following July of 2008, just as the economy hits the worst skids. And we were ready to adopt a fellow Detroiters line, Gilda Radner for Saturday Night Live when she used to play Emily Litella. Never mind. And so last year we redid the report, and we are now more optimistic about manufacturing than ever. So let me just go through a couple of slides here to show you. Back in January 2007, when we started our report, our first report, we had about 300,000 employees in Massachusetts manufacturing. Now that's down from 801,000 during World War II and 600,000 during the mini computer boom in the 1970s. And then we saw it after our report was about ready to come out, which came out in June of 2008, or July, we went from 289,000 to 252,000. We lost 36,500 jobs. And we were on the verge of saying, well, maybe we were too optimistic. But if you look at what has happened since then, this is November 2009, when it reached 253,000, and one might have predicted it would continue to decline. It has actually stabilized, and today we have about the same employment, despite having come through the Great Recession, with an unemployment rate still of close to 7% in the state. We're holding steady, despite this, and despite rapid productivity growth. That means that manufacturing still is the 6th largest employer in the Commonwealth, with 250,000 employees. But because it is such a high-wage industry, and because so many of its employees are full-time employees, some making overtime, manufacturing actually has the 2nd highest payroll in the state. No one knew that when we started looking at that 5 years ago. Only healthcare, with more than twice as many employees, has a larger payroll than manufacturing. Moreover, unlike the city where I grew up and where Amy was born, Detroit, which had a single industry, our manufacturing sector is diverse. It's advanced throughout, but it's everything from navigation, measuring, medical, and control instruments, to semiconductors, to printing, to computer and peripheral equipment, to bakeries and tortilla makers. That's actually a good thing for a region, to have that kind of diversity. And the thing that makes it successful is it has been unbelievably productive. Productivity growth between 2007 and 2011, the period of our second study, averaged 8.7% productivity growth in manufacturing, which is 5 times the average in the rest of the economy. Now what's amazing about that, productivity is output per worker. You would think with such massive productivity growth, you would have seen rather dramatic losses in employment. But sales growth has been so great that now manufacturing represents 12.2% of total output in the state, the first time it's actually grown as a percentage of state gross domestic product since World War II. Okay? But it's got some challenges that you know about, particularly you who are in the manufacturing sector yourself, and that is this is a workforce that is growing very rapidly. Yesterday we heard from one manufacturer after another was saying, oh, the average age of my workforce is 51, 53. We project, because of the retirement of many of the workers in manufacturing, that between now and 10 years from now, we will have 100,000 job openings. And how we'll fill that, we don't quite know yet. We do know that manufacturers are optimistic. We asked in a survey last year, how many of you expect to have continued production levels in Massachusetts at current levels or greater? 2/3 said they expect to have current production levels 5 years from now or greater. And then when we asked about employment, actually 70% of our manufacturers said they expect to add employees. So this is a sector that is not only strong, but coming back and critical. And what's also beautiful about it is 2 factors. One, it's all over the state. I'm now working part-time at the Boston Federal Reserve Bank as a senior visiting scholar. I'm setting world interest rates. In my spare time, though, I'm working with the Springfields and the Hollyoaks and the Lawrences and Lowells, and this is citing Fitchburg, Reading, other communities where we're going to see that kind of growth.